Hey everybody, my name is Landon Brown, and I am excited to chat with you guys a bit today about my leadership philosophy and my action plan for what's the next steps for me after this class. Um, Super excited just to jump into it with you guys. But here's a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about as we kind of quickly journey through some of this stuff. So, first and foremost, I want to talk to you about the philosophy and kind of some of the exercises and stuff and steps I took to get to my final philosophy. And then I want to jump into the action plan with you guys and share the three stretch goals that I kind of developed alongside some timelines and some action steps for each of those as well. So we'll be touching on some Clifton strengths, we'll touch on Friedman's four-way view, and then kind of breaking down the key findings before we talk about the final philosophy and the next steps after that. Just to get started with the philosophy, my philosophy of leadership really kind of stems from my personal backstory. My journey with leadership is a kind of a complicated one. It stems from a lot of uh, poor self worth, I would say. I never really pictured myself as a leader. I kind of was more of an observer. I stood back and I just always hoped that maybe one day I'd have the confidence and directness that the people I saw leading held to be able to lead in my own way. But now, after years of reflection and kind of just growing stronger within that area, I've really found myself in multiple leadership positions, both in formal and informal settings. And this didn't happen right away. This wasn't an overnight kind of thing, but through a lot of just reflection, just kind of looking at my personal values and my convictions, I was really able to develop the kind of leader I wanted to be, which was inherently one that kind of reflected the virtues I wanted the leaders that led me growing up to kind of show me. And so I've got two pictures there. One is of me and a spelling bee in fifth grade, and I was very shy and I didn't really feel like much of a leader at that point. But the other pictures from my undergraduate experience where I would get up on stage to share with a room full of probably at least 1,000 people, if not hundreds, um, and just how much more comfortable I was at that stage. And so kind of the development from someone who hated to be in front of others, hated to speak, but eventually kind of got to that point. Um, so some of the kind of key activities in this class that we did that helped me really formulate my philosophy. One of the key ones was the Clifton strengths. And so I've taken this multiple times, but this time around I ended up getting the futuristic, which is a strategic thinking strength, the belief strength, which is an executing strength, the responsibility strength, which is an executing strength, the relator strength, which is a relationship building strength, and the competition strength, which is an influencing strength. Um, and so all of these kind of have roots. Some of them were tied to previous tests I took. Others were new, which was kind of an interesting kind of response to get. But I think the key stuff I want to highlight was um, my futuristic strength was one that I named and claimed and aimed earlier this semester as well. And so for me, I was very much focused on how can I use this vision of the future? How can I communicate that with people? How can I cast that so that we can aim towards the same goal? Um, which was super helpful for me. I never really approached it from that perspective before. I've always used it to kind of prioritize tasks and goals, and so kind of having a new spin on it was super helpful. Um, I've got short descriptors there if you're interested and if you aren't familiar with these, but essentially the futuristic is focused on what could be. The belief strength is focused on kind of conviction and kind of unchanging values that are unwavering in the face of adversity. Responsibility is about taking ownership of what I say I'm going to do, which is something that's very important to me. The relator strength is one that I actually keyed in on highly moving forward with my philosophy. But it's one about finding deep satisfaction and working hard with friends to achieve a goal. And I highly value close relationships, which we'll talk about here in a bit. And then finally, the competition strength, which is just kind of really just looking at measure my progress up against others. I do like to view that in a kind of a way of pushing myself and others to be better as well. So I think that kind of ties into some of the key findings I'll talk about later. I also really wanted to try out Friedman's four-way view after kind of getting some feedback on how my philosophy was shaping up and how I was focused on work and life balance. I really wanted to try to see what this could do for my philosophy, and so I just evaluated from a practical standpoint and a theoretical standpoint how important, work and school, home and family, community and self were to me, and then what the actual application of that is in my life. And what I found was there was a huge gap between what I wanted for myself and for work and school, for home and family compared to what the reality of that situation was. So I was much more focused on work and school than I am on home and family and self, and I want that to switch in those areas to be more balanced. I also found that those circles were relatively concentric, which was kind of an encouraging thing to note. But I did notice that I tend to have some different attributes at work and school compared to home and family, and some of those are kind of natural. I think just being around people that I know deeper, I feel like I can act a different way, act more kind of authentic, maybe around my family. Whereas at work and school, sometimes I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that dynamic looks like. But I think as I work on this stuff as a whole, I think it'll grow more and more concentric, which is what Friedman was hoping for there. All that to say, those exercises led to two key findings for me. It led to a focus on uh, this past that I had, and kind of identifying my values, my morals, my beliefs, and all of it I found was revolving around the basic ideas of relationship and community. Faith, family, friends, tradition, respect, those are all key components for me, but they all kind of revolve around and involve components of interactions and honesty with others. So I really value close relationship, and I really value deep and vulnerable kind of truths being able to be told between people. And so that in turn kind of helped shape three key areas that I've identified as my current philosophy, but that I also want to continue to develop. And so the authentic leadership style, which Northhouse kind of described this interpersonal process version of that, that felt like it was very relative to me, which is about authenticity emerging as a reciprocal process between leaders and followers. And so that felt very true to how I am with it being a very cyclical give and take. Um, there's also this transformational leadership theory, and that kind of involves moving everybody in the group towards a common goal, but also transforming them to their best selves. And so, as a teacher, um, as a professor, that's something that's very important to me. There's a lot of students that don't see their full potential, and so I kind of want to equip them and be able to empower them in that. And then finally, the narrative-based leadership. Jeff Mead said that it's how we use stories and storytelling to make sense of ourselves, our communities, and our worlds, and that it's a societal process. And I think I highly lean on that and kind of how it can help bolster the authentic side of things, especially when it comes to me sharing my life story and my testimony with the people I'm leading, and how that can open doors for trust and transparency within the team. Um, all of that roots back to the fact that I really desire hard work for myself and others. I've seen how that can win out like unforeseeable circumstances. I really want people to trust me when I'm leading them. I want people to deliver their best because they know that I will hold them accountable and they can trust me to do that. So, what does that look like to put that all into a plan? What does that look like to develop it further? So, I developed these three stretch goals. Each one of them relates to my philosophy in some way, but then they also have three very practical applications that I can try to practice moving forward. So the first one is that stretch goal one is I want to further develop my ability to lean into narrative leadership to tell relevant stories to help give a stronger direction for groups I'm leading. So this connects very directly to, and I gave the quote there, but the idea that by refining my skill of narrative leadership and telling my story alongside being able to weave a story of where I see the group heading, it will in turn be able to provide a stronger vision for the group's greater good to follow. And so my three action steps for that are I want to develop a broader range of stories and experiences to pull from, and mainly I want to do that through listening to new podcasts. And so I am aiming to do that 2 times a week to watch a new podcast episode. I'm not a big podcast guy, but I'm hoping for this I can adjust and do that. The second is I want to practice narrative leadership by pushing myself outside my comfort zone and basically just starting to post narrative based content on social media. I've been really wanting to grow my design business on social media, so I kind of feel like I'm killing two birds with one stone. My goal is once the semester lightens up, I want to record and publish one of those a week starting mid-June. And then finally, I want to journal my thoughts and experiences in some type of format that I can look back on and remember. I'm not a big journaling guy either, but I get so busy that I often overlook the way I'm feeling and don't fully process it. So, 2 times a week to start, I want to journal for about 10 minutes. Stretch goal two, I really want to focus on investing time outside of my schedule to build relationships with the people I'm leading, both in home and work spheres. I really want to lean into having more established relationships with those following me while maintaining healthy boundaries. Um, and that connects to the line in my philosophy about close knit relationships enabling me to lead people and for them to know that I care about them and for them to trust me in a deeper sense. And also just wanting to really hold people accountable, but also uplift and celebrate their successes. So for me, this boils down to three kind of key steps. The first is I want to sit down with the incoming freshmen design majors, just so I can put names to faces. I know that was something that would mean a lot to me as a student, especially as an incoming student. So I want to meet with one student a week during my professional days this fall. The second is I want to pick up traditions with my family. The busyness of being a new instructor, a new professor has been crazy. Having a new baby has been even crazier, and then being in grad school on top of that is a third layer of just insanity, which is all beautiful things, but it does kind of, you see a loss of some things that were meaningful before. And so I want to pick that back up. I want to try to start involving pizza night, board game nights, and date nights with my wife again once our daughter's a little older, just so I can kind of have that deeper connection with my family. And I think it'll in turn help me lead better in the home, but also in the professional context. So 1 times a week pizza night, 1 times a week game night, and then 1 times biweekly date night. And we'll see how that goes, to try to reinstate some of those, and maybe the timeline will get adjusted too. But and then finally, I want to be beginning to build deeper relationships with my colleagues in my department that I teach in. So achieving this, I really want to try to contribute more to department meetings. I want to have my door open outside of office hours, and I really want to seek out colleagues for one-on-one conversation. Um, so this is going to look like one-time comment each department meeting. I really want to do 2 to 3 conversations with each colleague per week, even if it's something short. And then 4 times a week for 2 hours outside of office hours, I want to have my door open just to kind of invite more community in there. And my final stretch goal is that I really want to refine the balance between work and life so I can enter into both arenas with dedicated focus and renewed energy. I'm currently really burnt out and I'm in a bit of a limbo also where I'm reactive rather than proactive. And it leaves me very stretched thin, just between home and work. Those two areas have been intersecting too much for my comfortability. It's really been impacting my ability to lead well at home as well as in the classroom. So it connects to my leadership philosophy. Just when I said that faith, family, friends, and tradition and respect are all key factors of what I hold dear. And I kind of challenge myself that if those are really what I feel are true and dear to me, I need to give them the appropriate amount of care and attention that they need, or they'll wilt. That's not something that I want as much as I can help it. So, my 3 action steps for that: one is I want to limit the amount of work done at home outside of work hours. I really need to make sure I establish concrete boundaries with this. So, I want to work from 8 to 10 at home and during regular work hours for 3 times a week. And I'm hoping that'll eliminate the need to work at night other nights. And then I also want to develop a practice that limits the potential for distractions from work and home life with my cell phone. I find that to be very distracting. And so at work, I want it to be able to be out of reach, but also have some way of knowing if my wife calls or texts and needs something. But at home, I want to try to remove that from the equation as much as possible. So I want to try to do that 3 times a week, starting soon. And finally, I want to create healthier physical boundaries or physical habits to enable my body to provide deeper focus and energy when doing tasks. So, focus one would be drinking 160 ounces of water a day. That's based off a water intake calculator. Focus two would be getting 45 minutes or more of physical exercise. And then focus three would be getting 7+ hours of sleep for the majority of the nights in a week, which is very rare for me currently. So, focus one, I want to do that 7 times a week. Focus two, maybe 1 time a week to start, but slowly getting back up to 4, which was my old routine. And then focus three would be doing that around 4 times a week to start. Um, so all of that to say, definitely looking forward to seeing how this rolls out. It's a lot of work and a lot of stuff, but I think it's very practical, and I tried to break it down in a way that would be achievable too. So I'm hoping to see some progress with this in the upcoming months, and I'm excited to learn about what you all are going to share too, and to see where we're all going to grow as leaders.